All right, I think we have a quorum. Hi, everyone. I'm Ryan Scott. I'm an operating partner at Khosla Ventures. I've been here almost a year now. I help our portfolio companies with marketing and growth. So today I'm going to talk about the 3 growth killers that my partner and I'll introduce him in a second. He actually couldn't be here today. But the 3 growth killers that we see repeatedly happen. So these are the 3 top growth killers that we see. The first one is unclear brand and positioning, which I'll go deep on today. The second one is chasing growth before you have product market fit. And specifically, what is product market fit? How do I define it? How do you measure it? What if you don't have enough data to know if you have it or not? And then once you do, how do you scale and build a multi-channel growth engine? The last piece is hiring growth talent. But what happens is a lot of times we see people hire the wrong people. They lack the true signal, the true spikes. And I'll talk a little bit about how we de-risk that type of hiring. So first of all, a little bit about me. I've been marketing now for 24 and a half years. I've been scaling businesses since 1998, B2B, B2C, direct-to-consumer, e-commerce. I've cut across so many different sectors. I started management consulting, but financial services, telco, health and wellness, e-commerce, food tech, and even enterprise. Most recently, I was the first CMO of a company called Etsy. You probably know it. I was the head of all of international and domestic US in terms of product and marketing. I held the CMO role there. And before that, I had a bunch of other experiences as the first-time CMO or head of growth. So employee 30 at Grubhub, pre-Uber Eats, pre-DoorDash. First CMO at SoulCycle. So these are a lot of consumer brands. I've worked in venture. I've been in venture businesses that have gone public. I've been public to private. And I also sit on a board called Rover. For those that may know it, it's a 2-sided marketplace in the pet services business. A little fun fact about me, I owned 20,000 domains as a kid. I arbitraged large consumer brands, so I bought derivative domains. I started doing it in 1996. AmazonFirst.com, AmazonPremier.com. I actually arbitraged AWS and drove developers to their affiliate program, and I used SEO, SEM, and affiliate to earn a commission per sale. I sold that business to a private equity firm, and I really learned very early on that I wanted to drive growth, but figure out asymmetric, unfair ways to do it, where the economics made sense, and I'll touch a little bit about that. On the right side is my partner in crime, Brett Broman. He can't be here, unfortunately, today, but Brett, he's what I call a full-stack growth architect, sort of a new term. I've kind of coined it, but he goes very deep into the analytics, and then the MarTech stack, and then into channels. And both of us share some of those experiences. He can get very detailed into your system design for growth. He worked at some of the most iconic companies at the most formative stages, including Square. He worked at Opendoor very early with Keith. And he was an operating partner at Andreessen Horowitz before this. So he's someone who you should definitely get to know if you don't. The 3 growth killers we see repeatedly, as I mentioned, nailing brand and positioning. You'll hear me talk about the onlyness factor because it's the only thing that matters, actually, when it comes to positioning. Finding product market fit and building a multi-channel growth engine. And then, as I mentioned, hiring top talent that spikes to compound your growth. So all 3 of these are inextricably linked in my view, and I'll show you why. So building a brand. First, there's a little story about Listerine. In the 1880s, people were bathing in a pool of bacteria. And Listerine was their go-to solution. Sales were good, but they weren't good enough for the CEO. So his son took the word halitus, which meant bad breath, and he added the cool-sounding osis to it, which essentially created halitosis. So you no longer had bad breath. You had this medical condition called halitosis. He went even further, and he developed this persona called Edna. Edna was unpopular with her kids. She couldn't find a partner. She had very few friends. all because she had this medical condition called halitosis. The rest is kind of history, actually. They became the huge brand that they are today, and this was in the 1880s. In my view, this is one of the first forms of brand strategy and marketing. So what is branding? I find that too many startups think brand is a logo, a tagline, a mood board. But brand isn't what you say. It's how people feel when you're not in the room, according to Jeff Bezos. And it's the story that they tell themselves, the shortcut one makes a decision on. And the best brands in the world create what I call mental availability. They make it easy to remember, easy to choose, and really hard to forget. So if people don't know why you matter, it doesn't really matter about your growth loop because you're essentially going to churn. Brands that win do two things really, really well. There's two major inputs into the brand equation. The first one is distinction, and this one gets underinvested in a lot of times. This is, are you instantly recognizable? Your look and feel, your voice guide, your copy, your messaging, your value points, and then is it beautiful design? Design that gets rewarded, that builds legitimacy and trust and authority and just better. And obviously, those attributes change emotionally based on your ICP and what matters to them and what tips them. According to Marty Neumeier, who actually spoke at a KV Summit a few years back, I thought he had the best definition of branding. He essentially said it's a result, it's an outcome, it's something tangible. It's a person's gut feeling, the 5-second blink test about your product, company, or service. So it's in their hearts, it's in their minds, it's essentially a reputation. So ask yourself, what reputation has your brand created? And or what reputation would you like it to create? Would you like to create? We use a simple formula in branding that defines good positioning. The formula's up here. I gave you a quick example, but essentially it's among target audience. Brand is the category, that key benefit, because reason to believe. This is sort of the DNA. It's not your messaging that goes to customers. It forces clarity around who you're for, what you do that is unique, and why that matters. When this is strong, it doesn't just inform your website. It aligns your product roadmap, your creative brief, your pitch decks, your sales scripts. And the brands that scale the fastest are the ones that knew who they're for and who they're not. I was talking a little bit earlier with someone before we filled the room out about ICP and really being crisp and sharpening the spear on exactly who that is, or the need states or the need states that they have. The clarity around your company not only makes it memorable, but it makes it more buyable. So I'm going to make this real for you in a second. And I took the liberty to actually take some of our portcos and actually put together what I want you to think about in terms of a provocation around how do you really build brand. So the word emotion comes up a lot. If you know marketers, they say, well, it's got to be more emotional. It's got to be emotionally resonant. But I don't think 99% of people actually understand the strategic implications of that. So on this slide, I'm going to show you how we move from what we do to what we make possible. This is actually go-to-market messaging today for these brands. Plus or minus a word or two, but essentially this is the concept. Okay? So if you take Poly AI, who automates customer service, they basically remove the robotic experience we all have when we call into customer service and have to go through IVR. They position themselves as the world's most lifelike AI voice agent. Technically accurate, but forgettable. How about every customer heard, every problem solved instantly? It feels like your best rep answered every call, always. We created something better, AI that sounds like your best rep. Emotionally, that's a transformation story. Fireflies, automate your meeting notes with AI. But as it evolves, perhaps something like remember everything, stay present. Free your mind to focus on what matters by capturing every idea, action, and insight from your meetings automatically. Never miss a moment. Emotionally, that's peace of mind. 8 Sleep, the smart cooling heating pod, and they have other products too. They have a pillow, they have supplements, they have other adjacent products that are all about helping you sleep to make you healthier. How about something like Wake Up Limitless? That's not a feature, that's a longevity message, that's a future. And what I like to tell brands is, please sell your customers on being better versions of themselves. This applies to B2B, deep tech, SMB. It does not matter. The customer has something that you are selling them, and there is a need state that they have, but we need to make sure we move away from function and we talk about what is possible. Doesn't mean we can't describe what we do underneath that in a really compelling way. Homebase, not on the slide, but I wanted to include an SMB and SaaS example. Scheduling and payrolling for small businesses. That's utility. Instead, give your team time. Give yourself your Saturday back. When a small business owner feels understood, they stay, they pay, and they tell their friends. I have my own quote: the more boring your brand, the more boring your category, the more important your brand. It's something I really hope you take away from this, because we have the ability to control that and orchestrate it. At Khosla, we have a brand process. There's several steps. I broke down 3 of them. We've shortlisted also top decile agencies based on stage, sector, problems you're looking to solve. But essentially, the process is we look at your brand narrative and positioning by hearing the market, the customers, the execs. We define brand territories. So usually you'll get 3 territories that we could explore where we're looking for emotional preference, strategically differentiating you vis-a-vis your competition, especially where it matters relative to your substitutes. We deliver narrative stories, so this is essentially your reasons to believe, which aren't always functional attributes, but they're also emotional attributes. And the way we actually land on these is we use research to do it. So we'll say, hey, what are your functional features, which is the what we do. What do you think the emotional attributes are for your brand? And we'll choose, let's say, 5 to 10 on each side. We run it through quantitative research, and we ask your ICP, and we work with data warehouse, with data sourcing companies that do this, to chip allocate on 1 through 5. Vis-a-vis all of your competition, which could be there isn't a space today for that, it's just behavior, to these are the other competitors on the shelf. And that chip allocation, and I guarantee you if we all wrote down, and you would do this with your exec team or your management teams, what you think would win, I'd say almost 100% of the time you would be wrong, especially on the emotional side. What we get is the winners, and then we take those inputs, and then we start building the brand around that. It influences communication, design, all of that type of stuff. It's a quantitative, data-driven approach to something that seems really soft. Most people don't know this. It's a really great capability. And then lastly is activation. It must integrate into your products, your marketing channels, web, app, hardware, paid, press, deck, it all must align. We're almost a third through the presentation. Here are some portcos on the far left where we have either done light work where we don't need a brand agency, we just help them with messaging and positioning, or we actually have full-fledged brand refreshes and or full brand rollouts in progress where I work with them and the agencies to do this work. Okay, we're going to switch over to finding product market fit and building your multi-channel growth engine. So first, what's the purpose of growth? The purpose of growth is 2 things. It's to scale usage of a product that already has product market fit. That already has product market fit, and to figure out a playbook to do that scaling. It's not one or the other, it's both. So we'll talk a little bit about how do you find or how do you know you have product market fit. So I usually get asked if it's time for growth or not. I get asked a lot. the single most important thing to growth is retention. Sam almost stole this slide from me. He just didn't have a visual at the last talk. People are using your product, and they would be absolutely, completely pissed if it went away. And just remember this, what I said, because I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the Sean Ellis test, which I all want you to take away. Retention curves are essentially visualizing the percentage of users who return to your product over time. Here's a stylized cohort of how you should look at it. So each line represents a cohort of users. And essentially, what we're looking for is a flatlining of the curve. Okay? If your curve nosedives to 0, you're not ready. If your curve flattens, even if low, there's something happening there that's very positive. It means that someone is finding repeatable value in your product. So flattened retention curves are your go signal. They differ by motion and category and business structure. So there's enterprise benchmarks, there's consumer benchmarks, and that's where we can help create that North Star milestone. But we want to see a flattening of the curve. Okay? I like monthly active, but that's not something that has to be fixed. It really depends on your product. Some people use daily if you're a social media platform. Some people use quarterly if they're more an enterprise and have a long consideration product. But I do like monthly active because it shows that you have skin in the game and people come back to your product one time per month. So retention isn't just a metric in my view. It really is the strongest lever of product growth. And without it, even the fastest growing products churn to 0. But what if you don't have enough data for product market fit to figure out product market fit from retention? In other words, you don't know if you're ready to grow. So first, we always recommend looking at conversion rates. So we will have benchmarks by motion. So whether you're a consumer PLG or enterprise company, we have all those benchmarks, so we want to inspect that. And the principle's the same. Can you convert intent into habit? But we got to be cautious because high conversion doesn't always mean high quality, especially in transactional businesses, freemium businesses, lead gen businesses. Second piece, might be the most important piece of today, is product market fit scoring, especially for some of the companies in this room. By a show of hands, how many people are familiar with the Sean Ellis test? Terrific. You're ahead of your competitors. The Sean Ellis test asks 2 questions, and I'm going to tell you how to use it. And by the way, I will follow up with you. You can follow up with me because it's a little bit more involved than how I'm going to describe it. But essentially, what percentage of your customers would be disappointed if they lost your product? We put it in a survey, and what we're doing is we're asking the cadence of new customers acquired. If it's a consumer brand, it's the last 2 weeks of new customers because there's velocity. If it's an SMB brand, it might be a month. If it's an enterprise motion, it might be a quarter. But it's all the new business coming in. And we're asking that question. 40% is a strong signal. It doesn't mean we don't market and lean in before, but 40% is you got something. Okay? Companies exceeding this threshold, they've demonstrated essentially strong traction, they're primed for growth. So the way I define the very disappointed, these are your core power users, okay? So they love your existing value prop, AI speed, seamless integration, price to value exchange. The somewhat disappointed, so this will be another radio button. This is the most critical group in the survey. They're on the fence. And what they do is they see core value in your product, but they have blockers. We want to take those blockers, and those are your tuners. It goes right to the product team, because that's going to move your 20% to 24, or your 24 to 28, or your 38 to 44. And what happens a lot is when we do research to figure out feedback is we get the worthwhile many as opposed to the vital few things that matter. And the Sean Ellis test focuses us on the vital few. It's the only thing that matters is focus. The not disappointed, it's going to be another radio button. They're outside your core market. It's almost guaranteed. They don't care. They don't need you. They just told you based on the question. Their suggestions often dilute our differentiation. Doesn't mean don't read the feedback, but typically we want to tactfully deprioritize them. The second thing we ask in the Sean Ellis test is, what is the primary benefit you receive from product X? So here is why we want to focus on the somewhat disappointed, because they already showed they appreciated your product, but they had some things they wanted. They wanted more speed. They wanted more value exchange in the annual subscription as an anecdote. They wanted an additional integration that was really important. So this is really important, the Sean Ellis test. And there's great information online about it. We use this all the time. You don't need perfect data. You need essentially directional confidence. Okay? There are metrics that matter most. So David Wyden, who spoke a little bit yesterday with a partner from Dragoneer, talked a little bit about this. I only look at these things. My team will look at things underneath this. It's the only things I care about. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about how I define these and how I interpret them from a marketing, go-to-market executive standpoint. LTV to CAC. Are you creating durable value per new customer versus the cost? Pretty simple. For example, don't chase 3-to-1 blindly. You're looking at LTV cohort by cohort. Is it improving? Is it declining? Are you adding incrementality? Are you cannibalizing as you're changing things in your product and changing things in your marketing? The second thing, CAC payback period. How quickly do you recover spend? That's what it means. You should know your payback by channel, SKU, tier, if that's in your business, and by customer segment. 3 to 6 month payback is gold for D2C. In enterprise, 12 months is fine for enterprise, but only if churn is low. We got to look at CAC payback. Don't overspend on customer acquisition and scaling investments before reaching a stable CAC payback period. So we are plotting this, and we're looking for stability, which is a really important one. Poor CAC payback period is a signal for lack of product market fit. What happens then? We go back to the Sean Ellis test. Okay? Contribution margin. This is what you actually make after marketing or sales, and/or sales. It's your gross margin minus your paid acquisition, your paid sales investments. That's it. I try to know it. I try to worship that number. Super important. This one, probably, there's the whole presentation on, and I'm glad David talked about it yesterday. It's the most important metric when you're leaning into sales and marketing, which is your last dollar spent, not LTV to CAC. It's the last dollar spent. So there's calculations to do this. In search, in sales, what did you return on it? Okay? And the reason why this is important is it tells us what happens when you scale spend. This is your curve. Okay? So as you spend more, where do you stop making money? And a lot of people get this wrong. And then especially as an investor, we go in, we look. But for me, it's more like it's my sign to say saturation, or I hit a diminishing return or efficient frontier. Do I change the creative? Do I change the pricing? Do I change, the amount of creative? Do I need to change my targeting? There's so many things we can do. Do I need to change out the rep, the script, the packaging, the spiff program, et cetera, et cetera. So this tells you where the scale breaks. And great growth leaders know their unit economics inside and out, not on the average, on the edge. So we like to interview for people that have patterns around this. They also know this too, but they really understand this well. Okay? Doesn't mean we can't be bold and provocative and test and set up hypotheses, by the way. It's just a good way to think about it. Once you've nailed retention, it's time to scale intelligently. And that usually means mapping channels, media, to stages. And I'll talk about some organic stuff as well. Most channels serve dual purposes. Meta and LinkedIn build performance and brand. Podcasts build brand and intent. Google is harvest. Influencers are story. You want to layer these channels in based on your stage. And performance alone is a race to the bottom. Okay? And I'm not going to get into much about attribution models today, but a last touch attribution is a starting point. It's like starting a marathon and saying, I got up to 3 miles. We got to move into modeling brand investments over time. But it's a good place to start. Brand alone is a vanity parade. Okay? So the compounders win by doing both. The framework. The framework that Brett and I use is foundational, exploratory, and measured expansion. So foundational, and there's going to be things I don't mention, like events and things, and these are all great things. But I'm just trying to give you a picture of foundational. Referral, SEO, AIO/AEO, which is the new thing, which is LLM optimization, which we could help you with. Google, sometimes Meta, and paid social and tight tandems with Google. And of course, outbound automation and LinkedIn for most B2B. When I say organic, there's a lot in there, because there's founder-led growth on LinkedIn. We work with a consultant who is a behind-the-scenes founder-led growth expert. Literally, he has about 600 posts that you've all seen on LinkedIn. 20,000 shares, 15,000 comments. And he works with founders, B2B in particular, to bring your story to life. And he knows the algorithmic hacks in LinkedIn. I got referred to him from a C-level executive there at LinkedIn. Just giving you a picture of how that could be. And it's a lower cost way to when you're starting to build your brand. It's PR in the spot where your ICP is. There's PR also off of LinkedIn, but it's a really interesting tactic. Exploratory. Influencers, sometimes we see that as foundational. It depends on the business. Podcast, streaming audio, YouTube, CTV, linear, at home. Measured expansion is when we get into this activity. And this is where we get into what's called media mix modeling. So we go from multi-touch attribution, where usually there's a last touch because we're trying to be very fiscally thoughtful and have the acumen to scale. But here's where we use media mix modeling. And this is where we're looking at the media and all your channels as a circle, including your organic. And it's weighting with statistics, usually a Bayesian model, what have you, and there's rules. We're starting to look at the value you create from brand and performance working together. Ideally, 40 to 60% of the investment at this point is on brand. Okay? And I'm going to open it up for questions at the end. I call it an equity-led execution, but it's a build-up. You don't start there. So I'm going to convince you why this is important. This study is 1,000+ brands and $200 billion worth of marketing spend. It is the best study I have ever seen on it. It's sourced at the bottom. And essentially, for over a decade, marketers, including myself, we wrestled consistently with the brand and performance trade-off, because it's really hard. Google, I can measure it. Meta, I could even get a triangulation. I got to keep spending there. And we will make sure you're expert and world class there if that's where your customers are. But it's going to hit a diminishing return. It's essentially going to cap out. So it's not either or, it's both. And what we found is there's actually a short-term and long-term ROI by channel. So if you look at the bars here, they represent the reality we see. And if you take a peek here, you'll see that search and social are great early on because they drive action and capture demand. And that's already out there, right? We know it's a demand capture channel. TV upper funnel channels, as you move to the left of the chart here, they work differently. They build awareness, they create future growth, and they unlock over time. And it helps you create demand over time. We just recently worked with a direct-to-consumer portfolio company heavily invested in SEM, social, and digital audio, which is podcasts. And they initially saw poor results with connected television, online video like YouTube, and linear television. And the reason is they were applying a very short-term measurement. So they came to us, and they said, look, we can't get out of this bottom funnel trap. And we know our ICP is other places. We worked with them. We designed a test. We showed them that after the 7-week mark, they saw this huge spike up in all their metrics: direct traffic, app downloads, sell-through. And it wasn't until we did that till we saw the ROI. We did a match market test. And essentially, it's now their biggest channel of growth, and they are leaning in heavily. So just to give you a sense. Growth comes when they're both working together, not in silos. And this chart just shows the real power of combining both. On the left, you see the ROI from pure performance tactics. In the middle is building brand alone. And then when you blend both, when you invest brand and performance together, your ROI jumps by about 90%. And I call that the brand advantage. Stronger returns, more efficient growth, longer term impact. The second bucket here sort of wraps up the second section. We work with a lot of portcos on this stuff because you could imagine, like, some are just starting. Some of them have been at it a long time. We always, almost always, deliver, if you're already in market, double-digit efficiency and double-digit growth from those investments. So it's a pretty exhaustive list. Gives you a sense of what we do. All right, hiring world-class growth talent. Final stretch, and then I'll open it up. I got to move quick, though. Operating growth requires talent that's focused on a lot more things today. At the top here, you see typically marketing was focused on awareness and acquisition, product on activation and retention, and sales on revenue and referral. It's a pretty high-level funnel. But the model has changed, okay? From awareness and acquisition to activation, retention, revenue, and referral. And the reason for this, which I didn't put on the slide, is because your product is a number. I believe the product is a number. It's a goal. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about my experience. At Etsy, the measurement for product and marketing was GMV, gross merchant volume, this is what Amazon uses, Marketplace, per active customer. Not you chase this, you chase that. It aligned everyone. Josh Silverman, world-class CEO, Skype, eBay, Shopping.com, founder of Evite, brilliant guy. It's like the vital few measure to align the whole company to drive impact. Didn't matter if you were in community and sales growth to get sellers, or you were on the demand side to drive buyers. You're working on ML and AI to enhance the algorithms for search and personalization discovery. Everyone's goal. And what it does, it really helps us focus. The other metric was getting buyers to 3 orders in the first 90 days. So it's kind of like the old Meta Facebook metric, which was like X amount of friends in the first Y period of time. So ours was three orders the first 90 days, and then 2 different categories you can purchase from. If you can get someone to purchase from 2 different categories in the first 180 days. Have a clear goal. It will align everyone. What does marketing actually look like today? There's product marketing, so you could see all the functions. It shows you the jobs to be done. Performance marketing, communication, brand marketing. There's toolkits, and there's KPIs and toolkits underneath each of these. We work with you to figure out where are you underrepresented, where do you need to focus. It also helps us get an understanding if you are going to hire, what type of pedigree you might need to bring in. When looking at talent that spikes, you want T-shaped growth people. These are leaders that don't just buy media, they don't just do branding, they build systems. So we look for system designers that build business equations. We prefer those in these businesses. They own the data, they partner cross-functionally, and essentially the way I think of it is they could have been technical founders 5 years ago. It's a very different head of marketing today. Doesn't mean they don't know brand. They're not going to be. There's data-driven ways to drive brand. I talked about that up front. That's what you want. Doesn't mean you're not going to pair them with someone who can do content creation, et cetera, but this is what we look for, and we help you de-risk this process by interviewing people, by creating an interviewing process, by creating case studies. Okay? Lastly, here's where we do either hiring, org design, things in progress. There's a lot more I haven't even added to this, but we do a lot of work in this field. So where do you go if you need help? You now know me. My email is up there. This is sort of our broad swath of offering. So we do a lot. We do have to manage our time. We overvalue our time, which means we try to focus it on things that matter most. But depending on where we are in bandwidth, we'd love to hear from you if there's problems you're trying to solve. We try to help you and your teams really build the engine. That's that's all I have. So maybe we could open it up for a question or two. Yop, am I good on time? 2 minutes? Okay. We'll try to take 2. We'll go here and there. Okay. Sorry, all.
Great presentation. So, from a B2B perspective, right, do you have any thoughts or ideas for executing field marketing, which are like very targeted, small dinners or high-touch engagement?
Yeah, it's a great question. So on B2B marketing, in terms of free stuff that I like to do, one, founder-led growth on LinkedIn. We have a 4-page how-to on it, which we could send you. You could either address it yourself and solve it, work with, if you have a PR firm or someone internally that knows that, they could help you execute that, or we could introduce you to Alec. And I know enough about his model to give you as much free advice. The second thing I would say to get people to events, to dinners, advisory boards. It's the most underutilized referral network at a B2B company. You don't do the recruiting. You're the gate. We like kind of become your gatekeeper. So Nicole sends a note from from Vinod to the tastemakers that know your ICP. Massive value gets exchanged here. It's free. Is it going to be the majority of the sales? Depends. Depends on your ACV. Like, are you selling? Depends what you're selling. So obviously SEO, LLM optimization as people start searching for your category, broad, mid-torso terms. We want to show up there. So we have to back into that with content creation, content-led growth on your product experience. So we really try to get your fishing lines. Obviously, PR is really important. We try to do those things. We try to do a little bit of conference. What are the select few ones that matter most? As opposed to being everywhere, assuming your industry has, aggregation of the ICP. So those are just some early thoughts.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could give us some advice on how growth differs for the PLG motion versus the enterprise sales motion. Because I feel like the KB is very strong at enterprise sales, but doesn't have so many PLG-led companies. And the playbook for enterprise sales is always, yes, focus on one foothold, expand outwards. With PLG, you often have a much more horizontal view of the world. Do you have any thoughts on how those two worlds differ?
I mean, it really comes down to what is the problem you're trying to solve. So brand and positioning applies to any product, service, or company. So if that's the problem, we diagnose it and we go through a motion. If it's in the channel level, it is going to be a little different. You're going to have sales best practices and motions, and we can help with that. And marketing to support it, the MarTech stack, ABM, all the things that go into supporting the sales teams. PLG is going to be much more like a consumer-led motion where there's unit economics, there's tracking. We know, what the SQL conversion rates are. We can literally see our growth through the funnel. So gives you a little perspective. Some of the things will be similar in terms of application across all those, those two models you mentioned, and some are going to be very different. The good news is between Brett and I, we cover both motions, so can absolutely help you. All right, I'm getting the hook, unfortunately. It was great to see everyone. Thank you so much for attending.